Okay, guys, we are going to look at the second part of factoring polynomials we did in 4546. And we are going to start with uh, four terms today. So listen, we first still want to see if there's a common factor, and then we look at how many terms there are. And when we do four terms, we do factor by what we call grouping. Okay, so let's take a look at a four term factor by grouping here. So I want to look and see if I have a common factor. I don't. Yeah, 6 and 7 both go into 42, but you can't get that out of AX. You got a couple X's, you got a couple of A's. So what I want to do is factor by grouping. So what I'm going to do, and really you can group in any order, but probably the smart thing to do here, guys, is just group the first two and the last two together. And then within each one of these groups, I want to see if they have a common factor. Because notice there's two terms here, and they both should have a common factor. So in this first grouping of two, I'm pretty sure the common factor here is x. So when I factor an x out of that, I'm left with a, and then plus 6. Okay, think about reverse distributive property, ax plus 6x. Okay, this is a plus, by the way. And out of this group, I think 7a and 42, they have a common factor of 7, and that's actually a positive 7. Okay, so 7 times a is 7a, and then 7 times 6 is positive 42. So now look what happens, guys. What we have now is what we call a common binomial. So notice both of these have a common binomial. So I'm going to take that binomial, and now I'm going to factor that binomial out. So a plus 6, a plus 6. So when I factor an a plus 6 out of this, what am I left with? Well, I'm left with just x. When I factor an a plus 6 out of this, I'm left with 7, and it's a positive 7. So there you go, guys. Now this looks like a lot like a trinomial factoring like we did the day before with the two binomials, but it really is kind of reverse FOIL, guys, but it's where your O and I don't necessarily combine. We haven't seen a lot of those, but those can happen on occasion, guys. So your answer here is a plus 6 times x plus 7. So guys, when we're factoring by grouping, we're always looking for a common binomial. So let's look at a couple others here. So let's look at this first one or second one here. I'm pretty sure we don't have a common factor here. I don't see anything they have in common. So let's go ahead. Let's just do the first two and the last two. Let's factor, boy, out of this, I think all I can factor is an m, and it's m squared, the lowest power of that. So that'd be what? 7m gets me back to 7m to the third, and then 2 here. For the second part, I think I can factor out a positive 7 again. So 7 times 7 is 49. I need that m in there. Then 7 times 2, my negative 2 is minus 14. So do I have that common binomial again, guys? Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and factor that out. Okay, and when I factor that out, what am I left with? I'm left with m squared plus 7. And that's your second binomial, and there we go. Okay, let's look at the last two here. Once again, no common factor here. 3 doesn't go in with the other evens here. So let's go ahead and separate the first two and the last two. So I'm going to factor, I'm going to factor a 2, I think, is all I can factor out of that first one. So that'd be xy minus 9. Out of this one, I think all I can factor is a 3, and I'm might factor a -3 since it's a negative. That might be a smart thing to do. But we'll see here. So that's y, and then that would be a -4x. Do I have a common binomial here? Wow. The answer to this one is no, guys. I do not have a common binomial. Now, it could be unfactorable, or it could be the fact, guys, we might need to regroup this in a different order. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to regroup these, guys. I'm going to put, and it doesn't, you can just experiment and try, but I'm going to put this term, 2xy, in with the 12x. And I'm going to do that, guys, because they both have an x. Okay, and so that makes me think that maybe that might be smart to group them together. Plus, I can get a 2 out of both of those, which leaves me left with the -18 and -3y. And I'll put the y first, then the -18, because we're used to putting that variable first. And now let's go ahead and regroup these. And let's factor a 2x out of this first one. So that's what, y plus 6, right? Okay, 2 times 6 is 12. Got an x, 2x times y. This one, I'm definitely, guys, going to factor out a negative out of this one, -3. They both have a negative, which might make me think I should have grouped those together, which we did. So -3 times y is a -3y. Then -3 times a +6 is 18. Oh, look at that, guys. I finally found my common binomial. And I think you'll find on your assignment that they're all factorable. But on occasion, guys, you might have to change the order. Not very often, but just on occasion, you might need to do that. Let's look at this last one, and you're definitely going to see something like this. And the first thing I'm going to do here, is there a common factor? And absolutely, notice they all have a b. And I'm also going to notice that I think I can divide 5 into all those. So I can factor out a 5b here, common factoring, reverse distributive property. So that's going to be a 2b to the third plus 6b minus 5b, oops, sorry, that's 5b squared, minus 5b minus, and then I believe this would be 15 here, guys. Okay. Now, look what we have left. We got 4 terms. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to split these 4 terms into the 2 and 2. And I'm going to go ahead and factor out a 2b squared out of this one. So that's going to be b plus 3. I'm going to factor a -5 out of this one. So that's going to be b plus 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and take that common binomial out, which is that b plus 3. And then 2b squared minus 5. And don't forget to bring your 5b down here, that common factor out there. So that would be this factored completely, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, guys, you should be able now to finish your 4-5 to 4-6 worksheet. Okay, so all of those should be able to be done now. And that's what you can work on for the rest of this period.